Hare Krishna, Shukwa Mataji. Welcome to the Monks podcast.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. My
Such an honor to have you with us. Since the first time I read your book on compassion, then we corresponded. You wrote to me about my book of the Ramayana and you appreciated some of the points. And then we met in the Bhaktivedanta hospital. Then I read your book. I realized that you are filling a vital need in the devotee community for somebody who can act as a guide, a coach and a guide for devotees when they are practicing their devotional life and facing various challenges. As devotees, we don't want to go to life coaches in the outside world. At the same time, we have various needs, not just directly spiritual needs, but we have various needs which may not be automatically addressed while we are in the devotee community. So when I travel across the world, I have also recommended several devotees who are having some difficulties to connect with you. And many of the devotees who have connected with you, they have experienced immense relief and uh, they felt it was like a new universe opening for them when they got the wisdom from you and the guidance from you. So I've been for a long time desiring that you can share your wisdom on this Monks podcast also. So thank you very much for joining today.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And so today we also have with us Gaura Kumar Prabhu. He is one of the leaders in the Bhakti Center, and he's also a very close friend of mine. And he works as the chair of the computer science department in the city of New York University. Is that city? Yeah. So
University.
yeah. Um, so both of us will be asking some questions to Shukwa Mataji together, and then we'll see how it goes today. So firstly, maybe you could start with your journey. So how did you feel the need for, say, what word do you use, for self-care, or say for caring for ourselves while practicing bhakti? How did you yourself find the need for that?
When I hit an identity crisis and a depression where I wanted to kill myself, I found that there was a need for something. That was pretty intense.
That's quite extreme.
And I found that the theory and the philosophy that had supported me for 27 years was no longer effective in me dealing with the circumstances of my life. I felt at a complete loss, and I didn't really feel like the devotees around me, they could only offer me theoretical, scriptural verses. And I knew those verses and they weren't penetrating into my heart. And so I started doing some studying. I took various courses. I learned compassionate communication. I was just desperate. And so I just said, Krishna, you got to help me here. If you want me to get through this, you got to help me. So he sent various modalities, and I interspersed and worked on myself through all these different practices, which to me connect up with our spiritual practice, because our spiritual practice isn't theoretical. It's actually a real practice. And so we need to be able to practically apply it. And that's what I try to offer. And I don't necessarily, I guess I give advice, but I don't necessarily see myself as a person who gives advice, but I open up a space where people feel at least safe to speak, that they can feel that their words will be heard confidentially, that they don't have to fear that I'm going to judge them, and that we can look at what's going on for them, not theoretically, but practically. What can we do that can move us forward out of whatever stuck place we're in? So it's more like, and it's custom designed for whatever person is going through whatever situation. There are certain things that are relevant for everyone, and certain things that are custom designed for individuals according to what place they're in. So My thought and I saw that there was a need. I saw that I couldn't find anyone to help me. And since Krishna gave me so many tools and so much support, I figured he wanted me to give back. So
Yes.
that's
Thank
what I
you. I
want to
mean,
do.
you're just speaking this so cheerfully, but it must have been quite a traumatic experience to go
It
through
was
it all.
intense. It was intense.
Yeah. So, I have also been over the years, before I was introduced to Krishna consciousness, one of the main genre of books I would read was self-help books. And then I just left it all. And then I started studying our scriptures. And they were very, I would say, illuminating, enriching. But as you said,
Absolutely.
that at a particular time, you start feeling that how does this translate into life? What do I do for that? So, I had tried to come up with a visual model, a Venn diagram. I would like to share that with you briefly, and then we can
Okay.
move forward. And Gaur Kumar Prabhu, at any time, feel free. You're a part of the discussion. Anytime you can chip in, either with a comment or a question, whenever you feel like it. Okay.
So while you're pulling that up, I just want to thank Sukava Mataji, because I remember very clearly in 2015 when we went through some challenges in our personal lives. You really helped us in coaching, self-care, and so I'm immensely grateful that I'm having this opportunity to be able to ask some questions. And so thank you, Mataji.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think really, I think as we mature in spiritual life, we come up against, maybe where it was that we left off in our last lifetime. And so, we maybe make some rapid progress, but then we come up against a wall of kind of like, okay, now how do I break through this? Because the illusory energy is so powerful, and we've deluded ourselves. So we need some extra support sometimes to break through those walls, and then and then we can apply it back and see how it relates to our philosophy.
Yeah.
It's just Krishna wanting us to grow more and more.
True. Thank you.
Yeah.
So see, thank you, Gaur
Let's see
Kumar, for
that
sharing that.
chart.
So this is, I talk about three things. That's textual spirituality, traditional spirituality, and applicational spirituality.
Wow.
So textual is basically, what does this, like you said, quoting verses. What does this verse mean? How does this verse flow into that verse? What are the various meanings of this word and that word? Then there is traditional spirituality, is where the tradition, how the philosophy is translated by the tradition. So that means a particular philosophy comes up, a particular worldview comes up, a specific set of practices come up. Say, worship the deities, chant the holy names, go to the holy places. So we could say, often in our movement, we talk about this itself as applicational spirituality. But it's more of that we could call it traditional application. But the applicational spirituality is where we apply to transform ourselves. So, for example, now the way I explain this is, I have a full, where is it gone? Yeah. And I won't go over the full presentation, but when I talk about application spirituality, how can I lead a more meaningful and purposeful life? How can I become more understanding and forgiving? How can I manage my emotions? How can I connect better with myself, with others, with nature?
Wow.
How can I connect with the ultimate reality? How can I become grateful?
Wow.
So then this is often what is called as spiritual but not religious, because people feel that sometimes this traditional spirituality, if it does not address their needs. See, when people in today's world want to become spiritual, they say, now they may not be interested in joining a particular tradition, or they may not be necessarily looking for what a particular text teaches. What they want to see is how it adds value to my life.
Right.
So my understanding is, at the intersection of all these three circles, now this place, that is where Krishna, we can find Krishna. Now we can just study it, we can study the text, and we can get lost in the text. We can we can practice the tradition, but we have the sacrificial brahmanas who were doing the traditional rituals, but they lost Krishna. And similarly, we can get it called into applying, but again we might lose Krishna.
Wow.
So ultimately, we want to come here in the center.
Yeah, I like that. I want to be in the center with Krishna.
Yeah. So
I mean, in that area where Krishna is, I want to be where Krishna is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So any thoughts about this? this
Yeah, I
visual?
think it's actually, I like that chart, and I can see the three different perspectives that you pointed out. And often we think, of course, our spirituality, our Krishna consciousness is one part of that, and integrating the 3 parts sometimes seems overwhelming and confusing, because there may seem to be some apparent contradictions. I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to go to that inner middle triangular part, because that's where all the contradictions are resolved and integrated into actually, even though it's a smaller part, it's actually a wider thing that encompasses all of it and more. So like that little part is the intersection, but actually in that little part is the potential to over encompass all of those parts and more, because Krishna's everything and everywhere.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I don't know.
Actually,
That's
yeah.
just.
So once you enter into that part, it'll expand unlimitedly. But
Yep.
so generally speaking, it is expected that the text, by the textual and the traditional, will automatically get us to that center. But sometimes we may not get there. And similarly, say when somebody is going into applied spirituality, they can go into areas which are actually not connected with Krishna also. So that's also a danger. That also has to be avoided.
Well, if you're going to follow the bhakti tradition, I mean, if you want to follow another tradition, you have the choice to do that. But yes, if in bhakti yoga, we want to really have a holistic perspective. We want to have a holistic perspective. It's just not we want all of it, because it gives more substance and support for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
On that note, Mataji, so things as practicing devotees, especially during the pandemic, I've seen that there have been a lot of tragedies that devotees have experienced, upsets and so on, in ourselves and in others also. So how do we look at why these upsets are happening in spite of our devotional practices?
They're not happening in spite of our devotional practices. They're actually happening because we're in the process of purification, and these upsets are the things that have to come up that we really need to work on. They're actually part of our spiritual development. They wouldn't come up if they weren't something that needed to be worked on. If it weren't there, then we wouldn't need to work on it. But if it's there, it's something that still needs to be worked on. If we're pure and equanimous and nothing upsets us, there's nothing to work on. But if upsets are coming up, that means, okay, there you go. There's your homework right in front of you. Does that make sense? Yep. It comes up because it's part of the process of like making the ghee. The impurities come up to the top. There they are. Now we can scrape them off. Before we couldn't see them because they were all interspersed with the ghee. But now we can clearly see, oh, wow, look at those impurities. Wow, I didn't see them before. There they are.
So does that mean that it is okay for devotees to understand the needs and feelings that they have? And it's not a waste of time to focus on the body and the mind when we should just focus only on the body?
Well, I tried that route of denying and neglecting the body for 27 years. And I did a pretty good job, I must say. I produced a lot of results. And and I was a good devotee, and I did all those things that a devotee's supposed to do the right way. And after 27 years, oh my gosh, huge amounts of anger came up, and I'm like, what happened here? So I would say that, how we do anything is how we do everything. So if we're neglecting the asset of the body's actually an asset. It's our boat to get us across the material ocean. Only in the human form of life can we actually reflect and, choose and even transform our behaviors. Animals don't have that ability. So this is an asset. So it's really about, managing our asset and using our asset. And so we don't want to mistreat the asset. If we mistreat it, then we're not going to get the full use of it, and we're not going to get the full effect of its potential. We're going to be using only a small portion of it. So the body, it's our boat. If we don't take care of our health, okay, we might die sooner, and maybe we want to die sooner. Okay, but is that what Krishna wants? They say that it's not a long life that makes you spiritual. Okay, and it's not a short life that makes you spiritual either. What does Krishna want? What does Krishna want? So taking care of our body is part of like respecting. Oh, you gave me a gift, Krishna. Thank you very much. Let me take care of this. I don't want to mistreat it. Let me take care of it. So that's the body. And as far as the feelings and the needs go, I'll say that every attachment we have attachments in the material world. We can call them, addictions, anarthas, false ego, whatever we want to call them. We have attachments. All attachments are emotional. If they were logical, we could just read the Bhagavad Gita and say, oh, Bhagavad Gita says I should detach from the mind. Okay, that's logical. Let me just detach from the mind. It's simple. I need to detach from my mind. Let me just do that. Why can't I do that? Because I'm emotionally attached to my mind. So if we don't deal with our emotions and attachment are very intimately connected, then I won't be able to really let go. And aversion is also emotional. When I'm averse to something, you can tell I'm averse to it. No, I don't like that. I don't want that. I'm averse. You can feel my energy. You can feel my emotion. So Bhagavad Gita tells us we don't want to be attached or averse. These are both attachments. Attachments are emotional. If we don't deal with our emotions, we're not going to really be able to let go of our attachments. It's true of any addiction. If you see all addictions, people who are addicts, say someone is smoking cigarettes, they know they're killing themselves. They might be on their deathbed with lung cancer. I know people like this, and they're smoking because they're attached. It's their way of relieving stress, but of course it caused more stress for the body, but they don't know how to deal with their stress or their feelings, so they just go to the quick fix, which kills them. So we do this on different levels in different ways. We all have our addictions, whether subtle or gross, and the subtle ones are sometimes more dangerous than the gross ones because we can't see them, and so they hide for a while. Anyway, I talk about some of this in my new book. Yes, please, Chaitanya Charan, Prabhu.
No, maybe you could, I would like to reflect on some of what you said, but since you brought it up, can you tell us a little bit about your book and what is it about? When is it likely to come out?
Okay, well, the book was so long. It's called The Gap, Some Truth About the Lies We Tell Ourselves. And the book was so long that it was suggested to me by a few devotees that I cut it in half, and I didn't quite know, I wasn't sure how to divide it. And so now I found a clean break in the topics. So the first part is about the mind and the false ego. And the second part is about the anarthas and kind of how to deal with the anarthas. So it clearly talks about all of these things that we're talking about in a analytical and a practical way to kind of give us a full scope of it. So that's like the short version of it.
Oh.
So the first book is called The Gap, Some Truth About the Lies We Tell Ourselves. And the part 2 is called Entering the Gap, More Truth About the Lies We Tell Ourselves.
Okay.
Okay, so that's...
It seems that this book is, this book is a much more broader application as compared to, say, a book on compassion. Just focus on one thing. Now it is, you are actually addressing the entire gamut of a devotee's life, and how that a devotee can grow holistically, as you mentioned earlier.
Something, it's holistic, and then it gets some specific parts, but it covers a lot of topics and a lot of territory, just to give kind of the holistic perspective. And yeah, like, yeah, I don't know
Okay.
exactly what I'd call it, but yeah, it has a lot. There's a lot in it. I tried to put it all in one book because I wanted to get it out of my head and on paper. And anyway.
Yeah. So, a couple of things about what you mentioned earlier, that generally, even when I grew up in my spiritual life, there was a fear and a suspicion about reading any books other than our traditions books, and that too even specifically Prabhupada's books. The fear is that one might get deviated by those reading those books. The suspicion is that, no, these are not necessarily what these are all people, as now I'll put it in scare quotes, karmis, who have written it. What do they know? I know there was one self-help book which I had read before I was introduced to Krishna consciousness, and I had found it very helpful at that time. But when I started practicing bhakti, and then I talked with a devotee about that book, and the devotee's response was, that person is a cow flesh eater. Do you think he can teach you anything of value? So I didn't know how to respond to that at that time. But I felt I'm just giving that as a sample of the cursory way in which at one time, uh, not only was all other wisdom considered unnecessary, but it was also seen as sometimes contaminating. Now I look back and see it's like a very short-sighted way of looking at things. But what I have my answers about this, but I would like to hear what do you think about this?
Well, I just like to say, on a practical matter, if we have a problem with our computer, right, we might take it to a computer expert. Now, in India, you have tons of devotees who are computer experts, so you might be able to take it to a devotee. Maybe in America, we don't have so many such things, but you might even take it to a computer store. Or if you have trouble with your phone, you might take it to the company where you got the phone, and they can help you to sort out things. You have a construction problem. You might not know a devotee who's into construction. You might consult with a construction expert, an engineer who knows how to do engineering, maybe an architect who knows how to do design. And if you have a medical problem, or you broke your wrist and you don't know any devotee doctors, you might go to a doctor who can fix your broken bone. So, we don't have trouble accessing information on these areas, but somehow when we think it's interfering with our spiritual perspective, we get a little nervous. Now, to me, it could get diverting if maybe you're really young in your Krishna conscious practice. It could be diverting. It's really all according to our desire. Really, Krishna fulfills our desires. So if we want to be diverted, we can be in the temple and we'll still be diverted. And if we really don't want to be diverted, we can read other books and they will maybe help us and not divert us. It really is, what's going on inside here. That being said, another reason why I wrote the book is because the same thing I've come across. I don't want to go to an outside, to a consultant or a counselor or a coach who's not a devotee. I don't want to talk to somebody who's not a devotee. I don't want to talk to a therapist who's not a devotee. So there is something to be said about that. At the same time, there are some value that they can offer, and we got to know what they can offer, and then what the limits are of what they can offer. But one of the reasons why I wrote the book is because I feel like, at least devotees can maybe get some kind of idea of what's out there and what modalities might help for certain things that they might be experiencing. And, they can feel that they have access through a devotee rather than, just anybody. I don't know. Not that I'm a devotee, but I'm practicing, I'm trying. So did that answer your question? Or is there more to it?
Yes, definitely. So, I also tackle this issue because I studied engineering, and some of the engineering, what I learned, not my specialized engineering, but overall, I'm using that knowledge in Krishna's service. So I learned English from a person who was a meat eater.
Right, exactly.
But I'm using that in Krishna's service. So somehow it seems that if somebody has learned something before they come to Krishna consciousness, that's fine, use it. But after you come to Krishna consciousness, don't learn anything more. That doesn't seem to make much sense to me. So there are two things over there. There's the source, which I don't find a very substantive argument, because Chanakya Pandit also said that, and Prabhupada quoted that, you can take gold even from a filthy place. So even if somebody is that way, it doesn't matter. But now coming to the point of the content, that see, there is a very clear understanding of the difference. Say if my hand is fractured, I obviously have to go to an orthopedic surgeon, get it repaired, as you said, or if my car is damaged or whatever, I have to do that. But when it comes to the domain of self-care, so that is, say, for example, when you consider especially the mind, not so much the body to some extent we understand that we have to go to a doctor. If I have to manage my finances, I may have to go to a financial expert. If I have to decide where to invest or whatever. But when it comes to the mind, somehow, in the material world, or in the outside world, people equate the mind and the soul and they reduce it to the mind. That means people consider the spiritual and the mental to be the same. Most people then say, I want to feel spiritual. They basically want to feel good. So they equate the soul with the mind. Whereas I feel we in the moment go to the other extreme and we equate the mind with the soul.
Right.
So that means we think that by the spiritual practices, the mind should be automatically taken care of. And
that would be really nice.
So at a philosophical level, somehow I feel that the acknowledgement that the mind is a distinct level of reality and it has to be addressed in its own way, that understanding, that acknowledgement is lacking. And one reason for that is also that, we say that mantra, the literal meaning of the word mantra is that which frees the mind from anxiety, from misery. So we expect, at least from the very definition of the mantra, which is our core sadhana, we expect that the spiritual practices like chanting should relieve our mind. And that's why it feels a little bit, not little bit, for many people it feels quite a bit of conflict when that which our spiritual wisdom is meant to address, if for that we need to go to somewhere else.
Can I interrupt here?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So if mantra is gonna free the mind, okay? So let me take the example of ghee. So when we heat the ghee, the heat is like the mantra. So we're heating the ghee. So the heating of the ghee frees the impurities to come to the top. Okay, great. If we don't scrape them off, where do they go? How do we get the purity? How do we get the pure ghee? We have to scrape them off. So we got to learn a little bit about the practice of once the impurities come up, like, where do we put them? What do we do with them? The mantra is bringing up the impurities. Great. But if we don't scrape them off and then we stir it up again, boom. We have to learn the process of, removing those impurities. Is that Was that a appropriate example?
Yeah, I like that. So, Gaur Kumar Prabhu, feel free at any time again.
Yeah.
Please.
So we were talking about judging, but also in terms of devotees, I've seen that, especially while living in communities, devotees tend to judge others a lot, even within the community. How do we go around it? I've been a victim, and I've also been one of the causes. Also, I've also judged others. So how do we go around it, Mataji? I mean, this is something that we've all struggled.
Well, I don't know if we're going to be able to go around it, but the nature of the mind is to judge. That's part of its design. It's supposed to judge what's hot, what's cold, what's dangerous, what's safe, what's edible, what's not edible, what's clean, what's not clean, it's meant to judge. So it has a use. However, of course, just like anything in the material world, it gets carried away. And then not only our judgment of things, our judgment of ourselves and our judgment of people becomes like an absolute. Now, a chair is a chair and it's made of maybe wood and fabric, okay, maybe a little metal. It doesn't have too much more than that. A soul in a human being, we don't even know who that soul is. We don't know what their relationship with Krishna is. We don't know who they are. And we're kind of just judging by the outside package or some habits they may have from their past conditioning. And when we put them in a box, we kind of encage them. We don't allow them to outgrow that, and we are not really associating with them. We're associating with their conditioning. So we're not really associating with them. And generally we judge others because we also judge ourselves. And, there's a difference between self-awareness and self-reflection and self-judgment. There's a complete different energy there. Judgment is a beating, like there's something wrong with me, there's something wrong with you. Reflection, observation might be, that's interesting. That didn't seem to work, or I wonder what they're really trying to say. So we can be curious. So that's one of my favorite quotes. Rather than being judgmental, be curious. Why did you say that? And what made you think that I was that way? When you said and you called me this name, what was it that I did that had you say that? Because I'm interested to know if my action is bringing up that assessment in you, maybe I need to look at how I was behaving. But if you don't give me the specific behavior, I can't do anything with it. It's just a label which doesn't give me any access to transform myself. I can't really take your feedback. So, if we couch our judgments, not couch them, but if we expand our assessments into maybe feedback, well, I'm seeing this, I'm wondering where that's coming from, or is that what you meant to say, or can you be a little more specific? We can get clarity, and it doesn't, then whatever our judgment, our mind was saying, we can see a wider, a broader perspective of it. So our judgment is like a little straw that we see through. And when we look through our little straw, we only see a little bit. And then when we open up to curiosity, we can see a bigger picture. Oh, I didn't know that your father died. No wonder you're so upset today. I didn't know that this was happening at home. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. And oh my gosh, I didn't know that you were abused as a kid. I didn't know. Oh my gosh, I had no idea what was going on in your world. And I didn't know that this was your first lifetime in Krishna consciousness. Oh my gosh. And I didn't know that you had all. We don't really know, but our judgment gives us the illusion that I know how Gaura Kumar is. I know about him. He's like this and this and this. or I know how I am. I've been living with myself long enough to know I'm like this, this, and this, rather than I am and you are this. I have habits of getting excited when I talk, if you haven't noticed. So I have habits of getting excited when I talk. People could make another judgment and say another thing about that, but we have habits, and we all have habits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
It's I'm really enjoying this discussion, I have to say. That's why I'm getting so excited.
Thank you. I would like to, Kumar, thank you for that question. Shubhamata, thank you for that answer. I would just like to relink this very beautiful analysis of judgment and curiosity back to the earlier point about self-help, what we're mentioning. I feel that sometimes as human beings, we have an innate tendency to judge. And sometimes our devotional practices or our spiritual philosophy actually increases and even equips that judgmental tendency. That means, say, if somebody is, say, struggling to do a particular thing, then we have quick answers. You are in Maya, or you are like this, you are like that, you are spaced out, you are this, you are that. And then we in fact, what happens is, it's almost like every devotee becomes like we could say, like a free consultant. They tell what is the diagnosis and they tell what is the prescription. You are in Maya, chant more attentively, or do this or do that. And then that actually, when that happens, we feel ununderstood. If there is a word like that, ununderstood.
Misunderstood.
Yeah.
Not understood.
Yeah, that's true. Misunderstood. But yeah, misunderstood. Yeah, that's better actually. Yeah, we feel misunderstood. And then we also close up. And then it leads to a lot of loneliness also. So we have certain needs which are not being addressed, or at least whatever somebody is telling, it's like, I have a disease and that prescription I've already tried it, it's not working for me.
Right.
So then it actually closes a person up quite a bit. So what do you think about this point, that how do we use our Krishna conscious philosophy to move toward curiosity in our interaction with each other, and not toward judgment with each other? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, there is a need in our judgment. So there's a couple of needs in our judgment. First of all, we want to have some certainty. Like, we all like certainty. That fulfills our need for security. We all have a need for security, right? So we come upon the absolute truth. Oh my gosh, I have the answers. I have the absolute truth. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the absolute truth. And we like certainty, and we like to be right. We want to have the right answer. We don't want to have the wrong answer. We don't want to be wrong. So we have the absolute truth. So that certainty and that absolute truth give us some security. I know. Knowing and having that, I know what to do. I know what the answer is. I know what the right answer is. It gives us a sense of security. So that fulfills our need for security. So that's why we kind of sometimes are attached to, that absolute truth in a certain way, in perceived in a certain way. And of course, security is emotional. So we can't just let it go. So then, so that was your one point about judgment. Now, you said people give, free advice, because we don't like to see other people in pain, and we don't like to be in pain. Nobody wants to be in pain. So as devotees, we don't want people to be in pain. And hey, I got the answer there. This is the absolute truth. Krishna says, Srila Prabhupada says, this is going to, help you. We don't like to see other people in pain, and we don't like to be in pain, but we become attached to quick fixes. Now, when we first come to Krishna consciousness and we first start chanting and we first start associating with devotees, oh my God, it's a brand new world. We're in the spiritual world. It's like, wow, you don't meet people like this. You don't come across energy like this. This is a whole new world. And you're like, this is awesome. However, as we progress in Krishna consciousness, it's not a quick fix. So we come to Krishna consciousness, we're in so much misery. We're in misery, we're suffering, right? How many people come to Krishna consciousness because they're suffering? I did,
Almost everyone.
Of course, I was looking for some knowledge and some information. I wanted the truth, but so we come and we get some instant relief. Oh my gosh, it feels so good to understand and to know what's going on and know the truth. Feels so good. But then Krishna says, well, there's a little more work for you to do because Krishna consciousness is not a quick fix. You can't paste Krishna consciousness on top of your conditioning. You're going to have to deal with that other stuff that's going to come up when you turn up the heat. When you chant the mantra and turn up the heat, the impurity is going to come out. You're going to have to do something with that. So the initial truth, it can't necessarily, it's not a quick fix. It's an integrated process, and we have to see, okay, I'm using a slotted spoon. That might take off some of the bigger parts of the impurities of the ghee. But oh my gosh, then the little impurities are still in the thing. Now I have to use a strainer. I might have to use a strainer. I might have to use different tools, and I might not have all the tools I'm needing. So it becomes, as we stay in Krishna consciousness longer, it becomes, more challenging. We need to, really see how we can, in reality, deepen our Krishna consciousness, not as a quick fix, not as a quick answer, but as a integrated process that actually really works. Now, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely address a lot of points.
Yeah.
See, there is one issue that what we are saying is that all these are resources, if I understood you right, is that these are resources for applying the practices of Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
So it's
yes.
not, so it could potentially be a hazard. It could potentially deviate us, but like you said earlier, that anything can deviate us. If somebody wants to be deviated even within a temple without doing any other activity, they can get deviated.
Absolutely.
So now, if we say these are our resources for applying, so does that mean that our own say the movement and the tradition doesn't provide these resources? Because again, going back to that earlier point about the mind, we tend to equate the mind with the soul, whereas as I say, outside people equate the soul with the mind. So so now, could it be that so I thought a little bit, and I'll share some of my thoughts, and then you can add or clarify or correct whatever. I feel that we are when we conceive of the tradition, we have like a very narrow vision of the tradition. The tradition was a community, tradition was a way of living, and the tradition was practiced, say, mostly in rural or small town kind of settings where people were together.
Yes.
Now we live in a much more fragmented society.
Yes.
The conflict between, I think that for each devotee, there are 3 conflicts that they have to negotiate.
Okay.
One is the conflict between us and the broader society around us.
Okay.
This conflict is much bigger today than what was in the past.
Because it's a bigger community.
Not just a bigger community, I would say the society is also much more materialistic now.
Oh, yes.
If you look at the tradition, even when Chaitanya Charitamrita is just 500 years ago,
yes,
even if we consider that people were not worshipping Krishna, But still it says that there were people who were worshipping other devtas, they were reading the Bhagavatam.
Yes. It's more degraded now.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So then second is that the conflict between the present me and the past me. That's also very big. Because of which the kind of conditionings we have to deal with are far more complicated than what say a person in the past from a purer background might have had to deal with them.
Yeah, they lived a simpler life.
Yeah. So, and third is also that now we, in one sense, when we are practicing bhakti, especially if we are living in a community where we are practicing bhakti, then it's, and I'm not just a community, if you are living in a temple or close to a temple, then it's almost like our multiple roles are mixed up. Is it our home or is it our workplace? It's both.
Or is it our place of worship?
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, Prabhupada, I think Prabhupada said about, Prabhupada also differentiated. I think Vrindavan is my what did he say? Vrindavan is my home, Mayapur is my place of worship, and Mumbai is my office. So yeah, beautiful. So I think because of all these tensions, the problems with the mind are much more today than what they were in the past. And in the tradition also, maybe there were certain resources which were available, which we don't know about now.
Yes.
Because just to complete this point, when I have read a little bit about not just the Vedic tradition, but also other religious traditions, one of the things they said is that a large part of the wisdom was passed down through the oral tradition. And in the past, writing books was much more difficult. It was not so easy, and a few people only wrote books. So what happened was, Srila Prabhupada, in a sense, had to, in the written word, give not only what was traditionally given in the written word, but also what was taught through the oral tradition.
Yeah.
And that oral tradition, Prabhupada did a remarkable job what he did in his books, but still, the oral tradition was huge.
Yeah.
And all those supports which were there in society, which were like presumed to be available for practitioners.
Right.
Now we are living in a place where they are not available.
Right.
If we could get all these self-care supports from within the tradition, that's fine. But if we don't get it, we need to get it from somewhere.
Right.
And wherever we get it from, we take it and move ahead.
I really like that perspective that you really showed. Like even previously there was Varnashram Dharma, and there was more apprenticeship and training, and more role models. And now we're more divided and separated and segregated and individualized, and less even extended families. And it's a lot more stress on the individual to work on things. Another point is that our movement as it is, as Prabhupada brought it to us, is, a little over 50 years old. It's still a relatively new movement. Yeah. And so, for us to, we're just now thinking about what to do about elder care, because now we have elders and previously we didn't. Whereas now a lot of traditions like the Christian and the Protestant church, they have elder care facilities, independent living facilities associated with the church. They have, programs for adolescents and teenagers. And, it's highly developed because they have so many more resources and they have so much more time and actually experience about what's working and what's not working. And we've started, building, expanding, making temples, and we've done a lot of the external expanding the external work to set up the foundation of the institution. And now it's time to go in and do the internal work that maybe we didn't have the time to do, and which is going to create sustainability. So, when you make a structure, it's not just throwing something together. You want something that's going to be sustainable. So we have the basic foundation, and we need to implement things that will make the process sustainable, will make over time, and it will allow devotees, resources to address different issues that maybe we haven't, as an institution, addressed. And I would say that that's more institutional than traditional, because as an institution, we're a fairly new institution. So does that make sense? Because, you've got a tradition, but now you've got a new institution, which has to function in new ways. So we're kind of still just developing. Does that make any sense?
Beautiful. I think that we sometimes conflate the institution with the tradition. The tradition is like, the institution is a current expression of the tradition.
Yes.
And the tradition had many more resources, which we as an institution now need to create. Yeah.
Yes. And relevantly, that has to be relevant to the time, place, and circumstance.
Yeah, that's true. Prabhupada also, he did at one time talk about churning. Now it's the time to churn the milk. We have enough devotees now. We need to churn the milk. Now, what he meant by that, and how he was going to be.
That was in 1972. He said that.
Yeah. So now, what he meant by that and how it was going to be done, he didn't. At least from what I have read, he didn't give specific guidelines, but he did recognize that means what his point was, that what we have been doing right now is not churning the milk. There is something which we need to do to churn the milk, which is basically, you could say, like you said earlier, that there is the external expansion and there is, we could say, the inner expansion of our consciousness, which we need to, I like the point of external and internal, because sometimes even for the external expansion of our movement, we draw on various resources. Like if we are going to build a temple, we don't just necessarily have only devotees, we have professional architects.
Absolutely.
So just as for the external expansion of our movement, we may draw resources from various places.
Yeah.
Then similarly for our internal expansion also, why not?
Why not? Why are we going to have to reinvent? Do we have to reinvent the wall? Do we have to learn how to make computers ourselves? Do we have to reinvent everything? People have already spent a lot of time and energy developing Krishna's sciences. These are Krishna's sciences. These are Krishna's resources. They've spent a lot of focus just on one aspect of it. Why don't we take that and use it? It saves us a lot of time. It saves us so much time. We don't have to develop them from scratch. They're already developed. If they're Krishna's principles and Krishna's sciences, computer science is Krishna's science. We have no trouble using Krishna's computer science. Was it a devotee that designed computer science? No. But these are all sciences. They're actually all Krishna's sciences.
So I really like how you're trying to integrate everything, Mataji. And one of the challenges that I've faced when I've approached devotees to take up this path of self-care, the immediate question is this self-care going to help me nourish my devotion? That is the first question I get. And if I say, no, just work on yourself, it will eventually help you nourish your devotion, then they become a little doubtful. Oh, if it's not going to help me in my chanting, then why waste time in self-care? So my question, can I nourish my devotion more by practicing self-care?
Okay. Well, it is an integrated thing. We are an integrated machine, and everything is actually intimately connected. And so self-care is actually vital to our spiritual life, because what is the self we're caring for? Who is the self we're caring for? If we think the self is the body, we're already, in a misconception, because it's not just about the body. But this external is a temple, which is housing the soul and the super soul. So will we not want to take care of this? Do we not take care of Krishna's temples? Do we not clean Krishna's temples? Did Lord Chaitanya not clean the Gundicha temple? over and over and over again. That's the inner cleanse that we are, it's necessary for us to do. So self-care, so this is what I write in my book. So I'm giving you a little trailer here. So we all need care, right? We all need care. We're persons, we're individuals. We all need some kind of care. We need to eat, we need to sleep, we need care. So if we don't care for ourselves, then what? Then somebody's going to have to take care of us. If I don't prepare my meals, or I don't go to the temple where there is a meal, or I don't go to the store or go to the garden and pick something, if I don't do anything to take care of myself, someone's going to have to come and make food and put it in my mouth and care for me. So if I don't care for myself, then I'm kind of putting a burden somewhere on somebody else to care for me. So that's one thing. And who am I responsible for caring for? I mean, Krishna did give me this soul. He made me as a soul, and he gave me this body. In reality, this is the soul and the self that I am responsible for caring for. So if I don't care for myself, I'm kind of putting a burden on somebody else to care for me. That's one thing. Now, another thing is, even in the airplane, they say, if the oxygen level goes down, put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you try to take care of somebody else. So why do they say that? Because we human beings don't do that. We neglect ourselves. And then if you're trying to take care of somebody else and fix somebody's oxygen mask on, and it's not working, but you don't have your oxygen mask on yourself, you lose your oxygen, you lose your consciousness, and then you die and you can't help the other person anyway. What's the point? So if I can't take care of myself physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, what do I have to give to another person? You know, I'm distracting myself from my real job. So the problem is that devotees sometimes think self-care is selfish. They equate the two, but they're completely not the same. Selfish means I don't have the exact quote. Let me think. Selfish means I have no regard for others. Self-absorbed means, no, selfish means I have no regard for others. I can't remember the other one. Something means I have no regard for myself. So it's not that we have no regard for ourselves or that we have no regard for others, but it has to be integrated. We can't have no care for ourselves and have any ability to actually care for others, because this is our job. This is what we've been given. So we need to care for both ourselves, and then we have the facility and the capacity to care for others. It gives us a sustainable platform from which to work. There's more I put in the book. I think I put 4 points. I'm in the middle of editing it, and there's so much, so I forgot exactly the 4 points, but it's in there. You know, how there's a difference between being selfish and self-aware. Yeah, self-aware. I think that's what it is, selfish and self-aware. Self-aware is, I can't remember exactly, so I don't want to get it mixed up. Did that help? Was that?
Yeah. But
you
still,
have more? Go ahead.
Like my specific question is, like, will self-care eventually make me a better devotee? Like a better, like go deeper.
A better okay. Yeah. What's going to make us? We can't make ourselves a better devotee. That's Krishna's job. But we can take our time and consciousness to help clear the impurities and not put more impurities in. So self-care is kind of continually cleansing the Ganducha temple, scraping off the impurities. So that's That's what self-care is about. We're caring for the self inside, ultimately, but we have to care for the body too, because that's where the self inside lives. And if the mind is agitated, how is it going to sit and chant and receive the mercy of the holy name? If it's going all over the place, it's not going to be able to hear and even receive the power of the holy name. So we got to do something with it. We got to somehow deal with it. So if we don't, it's not a mechanical process. You know, the mechanics get us a certain level, but at some point it's got to be integrated because it's all connected.
I really like what you said about, I really liked what you said about cleaning the impurities in our mind so that we can welcome Krishna in our minds, so that we can chant more peacefully.
And receive, and be present. Otherwise, our mind's going to be here and there and here and there and here and there, worried about this, worried about that. We got to deal with that. And our emotions too. Our emotions are our attachments and our aversions. If we don't deal with them, we're attached to this material world. We're staying here. You can't, just like the monkey with the what is it, the sweet balls or something inside the jar, right? You can't get your hand out. You can't get the sweet balls out unless you let go. So, we're going to be stuck in this material world if we don't learn how to let go of our attachments, which are all emotional. They're emotional. So we're going to have to deal with our emotions somewhere along the line. Was that helpful?
Thank you.
Okay.
Helpful.
Yeah.
Hi, Krishna.
Definitely. What I'm realizing increasingly is that maybe we have ourselves created a dichotomy where we have reduced the ambit of bhakti to certain things. That means bhakti means chanting the holy names. Bhakti means worshipping the deities. But bhakti is also inclusive. Anything that helps us in the service of Krishna is bhakti.
Absolutely.
So, like Prabhupada, I remember in the Lilamrit, when the devotees had a lot of difficulty in getting cement for building the Vrindavan temple. And finally, they got cement. So there's Prabhupada was so careful. Prabhupada was standing there and he was monitoring how it's happening. And then he told the devotee, be very careful that don't let the cement be stolen. And in the Lilamrit, it is written that Prabhupada was treating each cement bag as if it was like a gold bag. So
yeah, it was.
So so if counting cement bags can be bhakti, then say trying to understand our emotions and trying to understand our needs and taking care of that, why can't that be bhakti? Isn't it?
Yeah, because bhakti is not the externals. Bhakti is consciousness. Bhakti is our consciousness. So we want to be able to see Krishna everywhere and in everything, and how to utilize, Krishna made everything with a use. Now, we may not be utilizing everything, but everything does have a use. So are we using our body and our mind? Are we allowing our mind to use us? Are we allowing our emotions and our anger and our anarthas to and our false ego to take over and control us? Or are we directing? If we don't take responsibility and we're not self-aware, we're going to be on autopilot. And if we're on autopilot, the automated systems of defense and false ego, they're taking us away. Our consciousness has to be invested in the whole process. Our consciousness has to be there. It's not a mechanical process.
This is a very striking way of phrasing it, that if we don't use our emotions, they will use us.
They will.
I like the word. I like the specific word use over here, because use also means there's yukta vairagya. That we talk about how use material things with detachment.
Yes.
So even we don't want to get entangled by them, but we don't also want to reject them.
Right.
So just as like you talked earlier about the computer being used.
Yes.
So similarly, if we consider our emotions are very, very definitive because are very important for in shaping who we are and what we do. So it's almost like, if I don't want to use a computer, I can choose not to use a computer. It may make
Right.
my life a little difficult, but I can very well do without a computer. But the computer is external to me.
Yes.
It's much more difficult for me to say I won't use my emotions. The emotions are
There they
already
are.
there.
Yes.
And it is, if I don't use my emotions, they're not just going to stay silent. They are going to be there, and they are going to act, and they will make me act in unhealthy ways. So in that sense, they will use me.
And can I bring a point in here about emotions?
Yeah, please.
Because it has a lot to do with compassionate communication. Emotions are information. Emotions are feedback. Emotions are really wanting to show us there is some need inside of us that is not being addressed. Emotions are just like signals, like on the dashboard of a car. The light flashes, you need some gas or you need some oil. You know, if we don't listen to the signals, you know, in our subtle emotional body, it's going to end up being in our physical body. We're going to be sick, and then the messages are going to be getting louder. And if we neglect those messages that are coming through the feelings in our body, then we're going to have a lot more work to do, which is really going to distract us from our Krishna consciousness. So we want to take the information that the emotions are giving us. Oh, wow, there's some need here that's not being addressed. How can I address this and work on this? And took care of it. Okay, but if you don't work on it, your homework piles up. And then after 30 years of being in Krishna consciousness like me, boom, okay, here you go. Here's your bill. You haven't been paying your bills for 30 years. Now, here comes the toll. Take care of it. So, yeah.
That's
so
beautiful.
Interesting, because one of the core aspects of bhakti that we are taught initially is that you have to be humble and you have to be very forgiving. Humility,
humble and what?
And forgiving. You have to be very
forgiving.
Yeah, so these are two things that they're always taught. But how can we distinguish between genuine feelings of humility within us and tendencies of beating up the self? So when someone tells us that, we tend to neglect our needs, and then we keep beating ourselves up. Oh, I'm not humble. Right. I'm not humble. I'm not forgiving. I'm not forgiving.
Right.
Yes. So how do we distinguish between the genuine humility and this feeling that we get?
Okay, that's a very good question. I would like to say humility is a very, 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 very high virtue. And I just start with trying to be honest. So if we can't be really honest, we're not humble. So I just try to be honest, because humility is very a high virtue. Now, in regards to self-beating, you know, that's one of the illusions, you know, self-beating. You know, where does it say in scripture that we're supposed to like be so mean to ourselves? If we're mean to ourselves, you know, how are we going to be towards other people? So, you know, self-beating is actually a distraction. It's a distraction from the real issue. So I made a mistake. Why am I beating myself up? Because I'm not pure. I made a mistake. Well, I'm Jiva Tattva. I made a mistake. Can I simply go, admit the mistake, clean it up, and move forward? No, I can't do that. I have to hide the mistake. I'm too shameful. I feel really bad about myself. That's not humility. That's shame. That's not humility. That's shame. So, humility is a really high topic. Let's work on honesty and just being honest. And then the other one, so self-beating is really, it takes a lot of energy. So just say, you have this much energy in your hand, right? So you can use this energy to produce some result positively, or you can use this energy against yourself. So how does it feel when we beat ourselves up? We're using our energy and then we're feeling discouraged. I'm so fallen. I'm so stupid. That's low self-esteem. That's not humility. So we're using our energy against ourselves, you know, pushing ourselves down. And then we have no energy to like focus on chanting because we're so busy feeling how awful we are. and we're not awful. That's an illusion. We are part and parcel of Krishna. We may have habits which have some flavor of awfulness to them, but we are not awful. And then there's the other virtue of respect. This is a big one. So, respect, Lord Chaitanya's third Chikshastakam prayer, right? We should offer all respect to others and not expect. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Because you're talking a lot about humility, and I feel we could maybe unpack this a little bit.
Okay, good. Let's unpack it. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a lot to think about. So first thing I felt, based on the thought that came to me, and Gaura Prabhu also spoke this, that actually when we talk about humility, sometimes we talk about humility almost in a sense that we blot ourselves out of existence.
Absolutely.
It's humility doesn't mean that I devalue myself or I deny myself completely. It means that something like I value something bigger than myself, that I want to serve Krishna, and for serving Krishna I want to care for myself because it is I who am going to serve Krishna. But sometimes humility acquires a very negative focus, where if somebody has hurt me, insulted me, disrespected me, and then on top of that person says, if you are humble, you wouldn't feel hurt by that.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Who are they hurting?
The soul doesn't get hurt, so it's the body and the mind.
Right. I'd say the false ego.
Okay.
They're hurting the false ego. That's not really who we are. They're hurting our false sense of ourself. And if we're hurting our self-respect is taking care of our real self. We're taking care of our real self. If we're denigrating ourself, we can't have self-respect for the soul and denigrate at the same time. It's so conflictual, and it just creates so much conflict,
So are you saying that by this analysis, I should not feel hurt? Or is this more like an intellectual analysis to decrease the amount of the hurt? Or what are you trying to say by this?
Okay, what I'm trying to say is if they're hurting me, they're not really hurting me, they're hurting my false ego. So I need to look at, what am I identifying with? If I'm identifying with my false ego, that's actually my issue. It's my misidentification. It's an upadi. So if I'm attached to an upadi that I am this, and they're hurting that, and that's not me, that's a lie. So I'm mad at you for hurting something that's not really me. That's my problem. That's my misidentification. Does that make sense? It's on a deeper level, but.
Yeah, I know it's a deeper level. Somehow this seems to almost run, I would say, contrary to all that you have been speaking till now.
Okay, maybe.
Because till now what we have been speaking is, our emotions. Well, if I really is at the level where I could say that I'm different from my false ego, or I'm different from my mind, then I wouldn't need all this.
That's right. So we need to do both things simultaneously. It's a two real process. So we need to say, okay, so when you said this, I felt hurt. What did I need? So when we get to the need underneath the hurt, then we get more to the reality of the situation. So they're not, they're whatever they're saying is hitting an emotion which has a need underneath it. Okay? So we want to look at what is that need underneath that they're hitting. That's the important part here. And when we identify the need, that's closer to who we are as a soul, whereas otherwise we're defending our false ego, which is not who we really are. So we got to do both things at the same time, because you can't really defend your false ego and identify your need of your soul simultaneously, because they have slightly different needs sometimes. Does that make sense? it's kind of got to be a two-way process. You got to go back and forth and back and forth. You want to give empathy and identify your feelings and your needs. At the same time, sometimes you got to, be straight. You're hurting me. Well, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, no one can harm you unless you harm yourself. So if I'm identifying with my false conception of who I am, I'm harming myself. And then I'm blaming you for harming me.
I like this point of working on both levels.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So going back to an earlier point where you said we can see emotion as information.
Yes.
So if I go back to considering the mind as another level of reality, like the body.
Okay.
So say if somebody, while walking along, they're walking in a temple, they are going toward the deities, but they're stepping on my foot.
Okay.
And I feel pain.
Okay, yeah.
So then that pain is information that something is wrong.
Yes.
Now, similarly, if somebody is walking over me, not physically, but emotionally, then I feel pain.
Yes.
So, so at one level, when they're walking over my foot, I am the soul and I'm different from my foot.
Yes.
So in a sense, I can say they're not hurting me. But in another sense, they are actually hurting me. Because ultimately, I have to use this body in serving Krishna. And if my leg is injured, I won't be able to serve Krishna.
Yes.
Or like another point is that instead of not only will I not be able to serve Krishna, probably somebody else will have to serve me. If I don't take care of my needs, somebody else will eventually have to take care of my needs.
Absolutely.
So same way we could say.
So I'd like to say.
So just 1 minute, I'll complete my point. Then
finish.
So when you said that that if somebody is hurting me, it's actually they're hurting my false ego, not me. So this kind of distancing should not mean that I'll continue to let them hurt me. It's like somebody standing on my foot doesn't mean that I'm not the body, so let them stand on my foot.
Right.
So we have to do the needful to protect ourselves, while at the same time, and we could say one part of protecting ourselves is, say, dealing with the external situation. Another part of protecting ourselves is also to deal with the internals by understanding, actually, they're not hurting me. But right now, because my consciousness is invested in my mind, so I have to deal with the situation.
Yes. That's a very good explanation for it. Yes. And they're both there because, we want to be able to take some personal responsibility. So there is pain in the world. So somebody steps on my toe. There is pain. Yes, you're stepping on my toe. Excuse me, you stepped on my toe. Oh, I'm sorry. But then there could be suffering. You're so unconscious. You're so mean. I could add so much stuff. And that's suffering. You hurt me. You're mean. You don't like me. You're disrespecting me. I can add so many layers to it. So there needs to be a little bit of emotions as information, but then we got to understand that sometimes that judgmental mind adds a lot of extra information, which is associated more with the false ego than the real situation that's going on. So does that make sense? Did that help, or did that make it? Yeah, go ahead.
So you're saying that emotions can both inform and misinform. So we have to find out what is the actual information.
The mind misinterprets the emotion. So the emotion is really giving us the information of the need, and then the mind adds interpretations and assumptions and expectations and conclusions, which may have nothing to do with what's really happening. And that may be associated with the false ego. So we need to kind of, clearly see, what is what. So you're stepping on my foot. Yes. You're mean and nasty and disrespectful. And that's another issue. So we want to be able to address both of those at the same time.
I wrote one of my books on like quotes based on the Gita. You helped me to edit that also quite comprehensively. So there, I think there's one quote that just came to my mind, that I wrote this.
Huh.
Intelligence means to understand how our mind makes us misunderstand.
Aha, that's right. That's a good one. Yeah.
So, so
Yes.
it's a very beautiful point that, so like say if I'm angry, so I could just, if we apply that earlier point of judging ourselves and like you said, shaming ourselves, then if
Yes.
I'm feeling angry, that simply means I'm a short-tempered person. I have so many anarthas. Or
Right.
if
Right.
if you feel greed or lust or whatever, just say, okay, I'm such a fallen person because I have these particular anarthas. But instead of
Right.
that, okay, if I feel angry, I see that what what is it that is actually making me angry, and then
Yeah. What do I need?
okay. So now here you're
Yeah,
saying, what do I need?
I might need some consideration. I might need some compassion. I might need some understanding.
But
there's so many things that I might need it.
so what you
I'm
mean?
sorry, I interrupted your
No,
thought.
not interrupt. I interrupted you actually. Sorry about that. But I'm just saying that, say if somebody,
Okay, it's okay now.
if somebody disrespects me, well, isn't it straightforward that my need is that you should respect me? So what is there to like
Well,
explore within that?
okay, so if I'm angry, I may have a need for respect, but I might have a need for understanding. It's, you want to fine tune it, because if you just say you should respect me, you're disrespecting me, you're making an offense, it doesn't really get to the richness and the depth of really what's going on inside of me and what's going on inside of you. You may have a need to be heard, and maybe I interrupted you and you feel like I disrespected you when actually I was, who knows, so getting to the needs helps us to get more clarity. The mind tends to go to instant assumptions and conclusions based on our past, which may not actually be what's happening right now. So, we want to be present and clear what's going on right now. And a lot of times when we're upset with something, we think we're upset because you stepped on my toe, but actually I'm upset because 5 years ago, you screamed at me in front of people. 3 years ago, you took away my service. 2 years ago, you called me a name. 1 year ago, you ignored me. And now you're stepping on my toe. So all that may be piled together in my conclusion about what happened when you stepped on my toe.
So, yeah, I really like that answer, Mataji. So, I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about this. So, when someone disrespects us, how do we forgive them? Like, immediately our mind starts saying, you did this to me, you did this to me, you hurt me, you caused me pain. So, how do we let go of that feeling, of that emotion by forgiving them? I know that forgiveness is also talked a lot about in our scriptures, but when it comes to practice, it's actually extremely difficult, and I've seen devotees and myself struggle with it. So, how do we learn to forgive? Forgive ourselves and forgive others.
Yes. Well, first of all, when I say you disrespected me, you hurt me, I am putting all the blame over on you. So, first of all, whatever you did to have me say that you disrespected me, actually, what I'm trying to say is I have a need for respect. You may have had no intention of disrespecting me. Maybe your intention was to help me and you were just trying to give advice. And the way you gave advice to me, I felt like you were disrespecting me, but that wasn't your intention. So me saying you disrespected me is not necessarily the truth. So when I look at it, taking personal responsibility, I can say, when you said you need to look in the mirror at yourself, I felt hurt because I have a need for respect, and understanding. Could you tell me what you meant when you said that? Yeah, you got some spaghetti on your face. Oh, I didn't see that. Thank you very much for the feedback. Now, people may say it with a certain tone of voice, which may remind us of the way one of our parents talked to us. And we may still be emotionally scarred from the way we were treated by our parents. And so if you say, you need to look in the mirror, just that tone of voice may trigger something in us, which adds up and connects with all those memories of when my father said to me, you need to look at yourself. And then I react to you from all that past. And it's a lot more in the circumstance than that. But if I say, when you said you need to look in the mirror, I feel hurt. I have a need for respect. Would you be willing to tell me what you meant by that? Then the person could say, yeah, I'm just trying to help you. I noticed you had some spaghetti on your face and I wanted you to look in the mirror so you could clean it off. Well, thank you so much. And then I can separate those two incidences together, and that helps us to move into forgiveness. Now, if we don't see the whole picture clearly, we're not going to be able to forgive, because if I think and I've determined that you actually offended me and you disrespected me and you're mean, how am I going to? I didn't like that. But if I open up my mind and I understand, and maybe I have a conversation with you and I get a little deeper understanding, and maybe I have some empathy for myself. I have a need for respect, and I didn't get respect when I was a child. And so I have low self-esteem. When anybody gives me feedback or corrects me, I feel uncomfortable because I don't feel very good about myself. So how can I be kind to myself? It takes a lot to really understand what's going on inside there. It's a lot of stuff is going on in the subtle level that we are completely unaware of. And we're not getting that information so that we can get a clear picture. So if I understand, well, I have some, self-esteem issues. And when you said that, I felt really hurt. And, is there another way you could say that? Or what were you trying to say? And, well, I was just trying to say this, and I didn't really mean to hurt you. And I'm sorry if I hurt you. And, you could have like a nice discussion if you got some clarity about it. If you got some clarity about what was going on. Now, forgiving ourselves is really important, because if I don't know how to forgive myself, I'm not really going to be able to forgive others. Who is it that's the hardest person for us to forgive?
Ourselves.
The hardest person to forgive. Yeah, you know why? Because when I see you doing something, oh my God, he's such a hypocrite. Oh my God, that's like, I'd never do that. That's disgusting. But then when I notice that I cheated, or I said something, or I said a little white lie, inside I feel it. The super soul tells me, hey, you just told him not to do it. You just did that. I feel shame, but it's so embarrassing. Oh my God, I can't believe I just did what I hate. I hate when people do that, and I just did that. We got to cover that over, because they got it out here at you, and I can point it out to you, because that doesn't feel so bad. But the reason it bothers me is because I got some of that in here. So we can look at ourselves and see what my habit is, and what I do, and how I'm hypocritical, and how I'm out of integrity. And if I can address that and take responsibility for that and forgive myself, I can forgive anybody, because it's like somebody's yelling at me. Oh, and I never yelled at anybody in my life. I yelled at tons of people. I hurt tons of people's feelings. I would scream. So yeah, I hurt a lot of people when I was not conscious and not. So yeah, I can see how people can do that sometimes. And oh my God, this person's crying. I know how it feels to feel depressed. I was depressed and I couldn't get myself out of it. And some people get in those stuck places, and then the best they can do is vent out at somebody else. So, if I can have some understanding of myself, that I'm doing the best that I can, everybody is doing the best that they can. It's not that everybody's best is the same, but everybody is doing the best that they can with what they've got, with where they are, with what they understand, with what they've integrated. And it's not my job to change them. It's my job to understand me. And when I understand me and forgive me, I can forgive anybody, because what everybody has done, I've done it too. I've done it. Somewhere in my life, I've done it. Otherwise, I wouldn't even recognize it. I wouldn't even be able to see it. I would be naive to it, right? I wouldn't be able to see it. If I can see it, it means I have some experience of it.
Beautiful.
Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
That's a lot to.
Now,
You're sharing a lot of wisdom here with us. I feel that many of these concepts could be further unpacked. So,
yeah,
when you said about say exploring our needs, you also talked about earlier about a word, say something like self-absorption or self-obsession, or there is something, narcissism. So how do we decide that when I'm taking care of my needs, is it actually I'm addressing my needs, or I'm simply pampering myself? So that can happen at the physical level also. I think that can easily happen at the emotional level, where self-care becomes a excuse for self-indulgence.
Yes, it could. Anything can be misused. Self-care can be misused. Renunciation can be misused. Detachment can be misused. Attachment can be misused. It can all be misused. Every single quality can be misused. It can all be misused. It takes something to, get clarity on, what's going on inside of us. And it takes practice and presence. So like the things that we're talking about here, we can talk about them and we can give answers, but then actually applying them as a practice. So if you can, just because I'm answering so many questions and my mind is kind of racing, represence me to your question again so I can direct my thoughts specifically on the question that you asked. Can you ask it in another way?
Are you asking this to me, or are you saying that we should ask this to
I'm asking you,
others?
No, I'm asking you right now in the reality. Ask me your question again so I can represence myself.
Okay, so how do I know whether I am going from self-care towards self-indulgence? I am going towards, say, self-absorption, narcissism.
Okay. So this is the beginning of spiritual life. It's called honesty and integrity. It's called honesty and integrity. So Krishna's in our heart. So we can judge. We can assess. Is this helping me to remember Krishna more? Is this helping me to be compassionate to others and caring to others? Is this helping me in my service mood? Or am I being distracted? We could ask, is this the best I can do right now? Sometimes there might be times when we're going through some trauma and we may need to take more time and care with ourselves. And we may have to be a little more absorbed in ourselves. That may be there in the beginning, just like a child needs more care when they're younger. And as they get older, they can start to take care of themselves. So we just have to keep asking ourselves and Krishna, what do I need? What's an appropriate way and a favorable way for me to fulfill this need? We can ask ourselves, am I overindulging? Am I pampering myself? And we can just ask ourselves those questions and we'll get the answers. if we ask. If we really want to know, we'll get the answer. But if we're attached, I want to eat a chocolate cake every day, and we're attached to eating our chocolate cake every day, we are going to give all the justifications why we have to have it. But if we're not attached, if we're saying, okay, Krishna, I love chocolate cake, and there's a chocolate cake there. So do I really need to eat chocolate cake every day, or is it just self-indulgence? And if I'm really detached and I really want to know what Krishna wants me to know, then he'll say, come on, look at, you're gaining weight, your stomach's hurting, you just got a blood test and you don't have enough protein in your blood. Come on, let's be real here. So if we're attached in any way, our ability to ascertain if we're being self-indulgent or self-aware will be clouded. So integrity and honesty, self-honesty, those are the first steps we stand on to really get our grounding. If we can't be honest with ourselves and we can't be in integrity, then we're not going to have the clarity to be able to ascertain deeper questions about, am I pampering or not pampering? Now, sometimes, when we're going through a stressful time in our life, sometimes we need to bury our pain, and we do it by eating. It's a coping mechanism. Sometimes if we're in extreme anxiety, somebody just died, or we can't process, maybe we stop eating. Maybe we sleep for 3 days because we can't process it. So it can be different every day. What might seem like is self-indulgence at a certain period of time, it could just be a way of dealing with grieving. It could just be dealing with the way of depression or stress. So it's not a once-over answer that I am this, I am self-absorbed. Are my habits and my practices kind of pulling me towards self-absorption, or are they helping me with my self-development and self-realization and connection with Krishna? If we really want to know and we really want to connect and we're really asking those questions, we'll be able to get the clear answer. It really depends on our consciousness. And if we're not ready to hear those answers, we won't get those answers because we're not ready to hear them and we're not ready to take them on. Does that make sense? So sometimes maybe we will be.
When you say that I'm not ready to take it on, what does that mean practically? Then what should I do in that situation?
You just do the best you can. And maybe the best you can at that point in time is eat a whole chocolate cake, because I am so frustrated and so angry. I want to kill myself, or I'm going to eat this chocolate cake. Well, I'm going to eat the chocolate cake because it's better than killing myself. So that in that day, that might be the best you can do. Right. It's better to eat the chocolate cake than kill yourself, right? That's a better option. But that doesn't mean that I eat the chocolate cake every day. That means I need to go see, maybe need to seek out some support and some counseling because I'm wanting to eat chocolate cake every day because I want to kill myself every day. Maybe I need to get a bigger support system. We take things as information, not as a judgment that I'm self-absorbed. My coping mechanism of eating chocolate cake 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, okay, it might be okay. But if I'm doing it habitually and it's becoming an addiction, I need to look at other support systems because that's just a coping mechanism. That is not fully helping me. And if I really want holistic health, spiritual care, I'm going to need to look at a bigger perspective. Does that make sense?
Okay. So
it's
I'm
not
just trying
one
to understand.
answer.
So if you're saying that, no, I'm just trying to see how it would apply practically. So even if I'm going towards self-obsession, I shouldn't make that as a reason for condemning myself. So instead
No,
of that, okay, what is it, what need is not being fulfilled, because of which I'm going toward that becoming self-obsessed.
right. And honesty is there. It seems like I'm getting a little obsessed. That honesty right there can give you a protection. Seems like I'm getting a little obsessed with eating chocolate cake every day. That doesn't
No,
really
wait a
seem
minute. I
help.
just see.
Go
I was
ahead.
talking about obsession in a different sense, or maybe you are giving an example which I am not connecting. See, there is one thing
Okay.
is obsession with physical things, like say
Okay.
chocolate cake or many things like
Uh-huh.
that. But I'm
Uh-huh.
talking with about obsession with self-care. That means
Right.
I start becoming obsessed with, what am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this? And what is going on over here? So how
Well,
much can that become an obsession, and how? So you are saying you are using chocolate cake as an example for obsession with self-care also. Is that right?
yeah, well, anything can be an obsession. Anything. Austerity can be an obsession. I can be obsessed with fasting. I can be obsessed with, I can be obsessed with anything. I can be obsessed with looking like a great devotee. There are so many different types of obsessions. And some of the more good-looking obsessions are harder to distinguish than I can be obsessed with profit, adoration, and distinction, but I'm doing a lot of service and I look really good here, but people don't necessarily see that I'm obsessed with profit, adoration, and distinction, and I might be. So we gotta be able to be honest. As much as we can be honest with ourselves, to that degree, we can clear things away. When I can't be honest, if I'm in denial, there's not too much. I'm not going to go too far. I'm not going to go too far. If you're even able to ask the question, am I getting obsessed with myself? If you're even able to ask that question, that's a certain level of consciousness and self-awareness. A lot of times we're not even that self-aware to ask, am I being self-obsessed?
Beautiful.
I don't even see it.
Yeah.
So, honesty is a ground level thing. If I can be honest and get out of my denial of what I'm doing, that gives us a lot of space to, move forward. If I can be honest, that's like the ground that we can stand on. But it's sometimes hard to be that honest. We're used to hiding because we feel shameful. I talk about this in my book a lot.
So there could be hiding, and there could be neglecting,
It could
and
be, yes. Mm-hmm,
quite
mm-hmm.
often neglecting can be, we can do it in various ways. So I could say that I can become obsessed with my externals, so that I can dodge dealing with my internals.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
similarly, the opposite can also happen. I can obsess with my internals so that I can dodge dealing with my externals. Because
Could
after I
be,
do my internal
absolutely.
homework, I may also have to do some outer work. So
Yeah,
in
and
a
I could
sense,
be neglecting that. Right, exactly. Anything's possible. All those scenarios are all possible. That's why we have to be self-aware. We have to be self-honest, because it's not the same for anybody. It's not the same. We deal in different ways. We have different levels of coping. We have different strengths. We have different weaknesses. We have different propensities. It takes self-honesty. That's like ground level. We haven't really gotten anywhere, but just being on the ground is a great place to start.
beautiful.
So it's different. There's no one size fits all answer. Maya is so intricately diverse. She knows how to get each one of us in different ways, and she may get us in opposite ways, but it's her same energy. Just like energy can be heating or cooling, right? She knows exactly how to trick us. But if we're honest, then we can deal with it. And if we're not going very far. We're kind of stuck. Does that make sense?
So by honesty, yes, it definitely makes sense. So by now you have mentioned honesty a little bit. I mean, several times you have mentioned it. So I would like to articulate what I understand by honesty, and then you can elaborate. So honesty would basically mean that we acknowledge whatever we are feeling or whatever is going on without putting any label on it. So for
That's a,
example, say if I wake up in the morning and I don't feel fresh, the alarm has gone up, I meant to wake up, I feel very tired. So honesty would mean at one level, now this I am feeling tired. Now this tiredness could just be the because of the laziness that is there initially when we wake up. This tiredness could be because I slept very late yesterday and I need more rest. This tiredness could be because I had a bad night, I had bad dreams, and that's why although I slept adequate time, I didn't get rest. That tiredness could be because maybe I've fallen sick, and that's why I'm
mm-hmm.
feeling like that.
Yeah.
So honesty would mean that first, like say, I non-judgmentally acknowledge whatever I'm feeling, and
Mm-hmm.
then after that I try to analyze it. What, okay, I'm feeling like this, why am I feeling like this?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
But if I just
Yeah.
say, oh, I'm such a lazy person, I don't wake up whenever I set an alarm, I
Right.
don't wake up, I'm such a lazy person,
Right.
then that is actually, I may think that I'm being strict with myself, but I'm actually
Uh-huh.
being dishonest with myself.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a deep level of honesty. Actually, we don't usually get to that deep of a level of honesty until we start with integrity. Actually, integrity is kind of first before we get to that deep of a level of self-honesty. But yes, that level of self-honesty is so important because it's like, wow, why am I feeling tired? I got 8 hours sleep last night. I should feel fresh. Is this a bodily pain? Am I getting sick? Oh, my throat hurts a little bit. Maybe I'm getting sick. That's being really, understanding what's going on. Or, oh no, I didn't get enough sleep last night. No wonder I'm feeling tired. Do I want to get up? Yes, because I have a lot that I want to do. And if I need to take a nap, then maybe I'll take one a little later. So it's just being really honest. But integrity kind of helps us. Integrity is what helps me to kind of keep a balance. So in spiritual life, we want to keep balance, right? And it's so hard to balance everything. So what helps me to keep balance is integrity. So integrity is when I honor my word. So if I can keep my word to people and keep my integrity, then I can keep my balance. But if I tell you I'm going to be on this podcast and then I forget about it, or I schedule something else, or I'm not present, or I don't communicate with you, that's out of integrity. So just keeping the bare level integrity, keeping our schedules, keeping our promises, even keeping our promises to ourselves. I promised myself that I would, do my exercise for 15 minutes every day. If I don't keep my word to myself, how am I going to keep my vows to Krishna? It's all connected. So integrity helps us to keep a balance, and it helps us to let us know when, oh, maybe I'm taking on too much. I'm breaking my word right and left. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I can't think straight. I'm starting to yell at people. This isn't what I usually do. I'm feeling stressed. It's like I'm out of balance. I need to get myself in balance and give myself a little self-care so I can function more efficiently, because it's not efficient for me to run around like this and be treating devotees like this. I need to take on less so I can do it more qualitatively. So that's integrity, and that helps us to keep balance, and it helps to take us to deeper level honesty. And it's kind of a little simpler, because sometimes that level of honesty that you were talking about, that takes a lot more self-reflection, like internal self-reflection, whereas integrity is, I said I was going to do this and I didn't do this. So it's like a little bit more easier to see when I'm keeping my integrity and when I'm breaking it. Does that make sense?
Beautiful. So I never thought of integrity in this clear terms.
there's more to it too.
So if no, of course. So just mm, okay. While I gather my thoughts, Gaur Kumar Prabhu, do you have anything
Yeah,
to add
go ahead,
or
Gaura.
ask?
Yeah, so I mean, I really appreciate how you put humility at such a high bar, and you said focus on honesty and integrity. I really like that. And I also liked how you brought forgiveness to being empathetic, and I really appreciated that as well. So,
Yeah,
in one sense, I'm understanding that we should take it step by step at our level and not
yeah,
jump into these big things that we cannot even reach. So
exactly.
that's what I'm
Absolutely.
getting. That's what I'm getting.
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah. And we got to take it at our pace. I keep writing in my book, we're on a long distance marathon. This is not a sprint. This is not a race. I got to get there first. This is a marathon. I got to pace myself or I'm not even going to make it to the finish line, you know? So we got to pace ourselves. It's got to be sustainable. We got to make sure we got enough water. We got to train ourselves to, work ourselves up to the marathon. Some days we train, some days we, take a break. So it's important to take step by step. And we can appreciate step by step. We can appreciate each step. We're not in a race. We can appreciate, wow, this is what Krishna gave me today. How can I serve Krishna today? And this is the service Krishna gave me today. And that's what I did. And I did my best. And today is complete. And it was a beautiful day. And here's my offering. Thank you, Krishna. And I can feel complete in that day. It's not like I'm not going to feel complete until I get back to Godhead. Well, I might be pretty frustrated and agitated between the time of now and when I go back to Godhead. And if I'm frustrated and agitated and patient, I may not get there, or it's going to take me a lot longer to get there.
so step by step with self-honesty, self-integrity will eventually take us where we
One
want to be.
step at a time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Then there's more. But it starts, and integrity is kind of easy because it's like I give my word and I keep my word. It's something specific and it's doable and it's measurable. So it makes it a little easier for us to actually see if we kept our word. Self-honesty can be a little, well, I'm being honest. I'm telling you, you're a jerk. I'm being really straightforward with you here. You're a jerk. It's like, well, I think I'm being honest, but maybe that's not the fact. The fact is, I'm upset with you because of something you said to me, and that's more the truth. So integrity really is a little bit more manageable and measurable. So that's why it's a little easier, and that's why we start with that. If we can't do that, we're not going to be able to do the deeper levels of self-honesty.
We really maybe we can have another podcast where we go deeper into these subjects. There's a lot to discuss.
Oh my gosh.
I would like to ask one last question, and then Gaur Kumar, if you have to ask anything more, can do that, and then I'll try to summarize and you can give some concluding words. So now I'm trying to make a mental picture of these three things: humility, honesty, and integrity. So, and you said that, now I understood clearly about honesty and integrity, how integrity, because it is more connected with our external commitments. It is relatively easier to gauge whether we are having integrity or not. And how by that, once we start at least becoming observant to that level, eventually we can also be honest with ourselves. Now I also understand, say, how honesty and humility are connected, in the sense that if instead of artificially saying that I should be humble and I should not feel hurt by this person, whatever they have spoken, I honestly acknowledge what I am feeling and then try to look at my needs. So now, but how exactly is, say, humility and integrity related with each other? So
okay, I don't even really talk about humility. Like I say, humility is such a deep or high or advanced quality. I just work on being honest. If I can be honest, at deeper levels of honesty, integrity, and honesty. That's where I am right now. I can't really talk about humility because it's so vast and deep, and it's tricky. And there's so many false versions of it. And if I say that I'm humble, I'm probably proud that I'm humble. And so then I'm not humble. So humility, I can't talk about that. I can't talk about humility, but I can talk about honesty and integrity. So I can't talk about humility. I'm just sorry. It's too deep of a topic.
Yeah. Well,
I
I
gotta
can
be
only say
honest
that I
with you.
appreciate your humility in not wanting to talk about humility.
It's not humility, it's honesty. It's really honesty.
Yeah.
I can't really talk about it because it's too deep. But
Yes.
integrity is measurable and honesty is observable. Humility is Krishna's grace. So, I can say that much about it.
That's true.
Integrity is measurable. Honesty is observable. We can observe it inside. And humility is Krishna's grace. How's that?
Can you repeat? Integrity and honesty are
Integrity
observable.
is measurable. It's measurable. We can measure it by external standards. Honesty is observable. Like we can really, we can detect a little deeper when we're being more self-honest. It's observable, and it has different levels of depth to it. Humility comes by Krishna's grace. We can't make ourselves humble. Okay, that comes by Krishna's grace. That's why I can't talk about it, because I can't do it. It's just only by Krishna's grace. Does that make sense?
True. That's Gaura Prabhu, you want to ask anything as such?
No, Prabhu. I mean, thank you, Mataji, for answering all
Wow.
this clearly.
Wow, it was so fun to be with you. You guys were so interactive and so involved, and you tolerated my excited conversation.
It was not just excited, it was illuminating. So usually at the end of the talk, I try to summarize. I'm not sure how much I'll be able to do today because we went over a lot of territory, but let me try to do something.
It's all summarized in my book. All of this and more is inside both of my books.
So when is it likely to come out?
Well, it's in the editing stages, but I don't know exactly. It'd be nice if it could be published and distributed, by the end of the year. It would be nice if that could happen. I just don't know because there's a lot of things that I don't know about, but I'm in the final stages of doing my edits, and then, I have the charts and I have the pictures. I don't have the cover yet. I don't have all the, reference. So there's still some work to do. So, and then, so let's say maybe, by the end of this year, it could be fully out. Maybe before that, maybe by the end of the summer.
Yeah.
Whatever Krishna wants. Let's see. Let's have some blessings from the devotees.
Yeah, I mean, actually, you can really be blessing them through the books, but also I believe you have a website where if some devotees want to contact you, they can contact you. It's a heart connection. So I'll mention that also in the description. So you are available for devotees if they want to consult you?
Sometimes if I'm trying to finish the book, then it gets a little overwhelming. I am going to be doing a course on compassionate communication in like maybe a month or something like that, and it'll be available. It's a weekend course, so maybe I can put that on my website. So if people want to check, they can do that course with me online. So that would be helping them in another way. That's a group help. And then I'll be doing some other courses, but people can contact me. I just have to see in integrity what I can actually do. If I say I'm going to finish the book then I can't take on too much because that would be out of integrity, because then I can't really finish. So I have to balance my integrity. So, but they can, look at my website and see, but by the time they look at it and they need it, maybe I'll be more free as soon as I finish these books. I've got one more book on the burner too. Sorry, I didn't tell you about that one.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, yeah, so one more.
That's a lot of
and then
work.
that's it.
Okay. Yes.
So I'm sorry. So could you please summarize?
Yeah. So thank you. So I'll put the description of the website below, and many devotees may want to
Okay.
connect with you. So I think
Okay.
we discussed broadly on the theme of the role of self-care in bhakti. Mhm. Then we could say that the overarching theme. And then you started with your journey where you found that the standard prescriptions which you followed diligently for more than 2 decades, almost 3 decades, they weren't working, and you were depressed and the intense situation. And that's when you prayed to Krishna for guidance, and through, say, compassionate communication and other resources, you learned them, and now you are sharing them with others. And then a major part of the discussion, I think we discussed three main topics subsequently. One was, do devotees need self-care at all? So we talked about, isn't bhakti alone enough? So then there are 2-3 points in that. What does bhakti mean? Bhakti, is it just the devotional activities, or bhakti's ambit is broader to include other activities that help us to practice bhakti? So then I showed that Venn diagram of textual, traditional, and applicational spirituality.
Yeah.
And the idea is that just as we use various resources for doing our outer services to Krishna, like if we use if a computer, we want to fix it, we go to expert. So then why can't we use various resources for doing our inner work in Krishna's service? So then within that, there's this confusion, say, in the material world, people equate the soul with the mind, those who are like spiritually inclined, but we might equate the mind with the soul. So we may think that the spiritual practices will automatically take care of our mental needs or our emotional needs. But just like the body is a janra in itself, and the body is fractured, we have to go to a doctor. Similarly, our emotions also, we need to take care of them. And rather than seeing that we could become obsessed, and that can divert us from bhakti. But even while doing core devotional practices, we can get diverted from bhakti. So if we are earnest, and like you talk later about, if you're honest, then we will avoid getting obsessed, and we will use these for enhancing our service to Krishna, developing our relationship with Krishna. And then you talked about how that was one theme about why self-care is important. And then in self-care, we discussed about two things. One is judgmental attitude, and then within that also we discussed about humility further. Humility, honesty, and integrity. So judgmental attitude, the way we avoid that is by seeing that underlying those judgments, whether it is we passing it on ourselves or others passing it on ourselves, we treat them with curiosity rather than judgmentality. So you think I am like this, what made you think like that? We ask a question like that. Or even if we do something which is wrong, rather than beating ourselves up, you give quite a graphic example. If I have some energy, I use it to beat myself. I can't do anything else with that. So that shift from judgment to curiosity is a brilliant, I think, brilliant takeaway from this talk, apart from many others also. But so curiosity means, okay, why did I do that? Or why did that way we go below the labels to understanding our needs. And those needs are addressed. So rather than thinking, if I get angry, I'm simply a short-tempered person, or this person is such a arrogant, disrespectful person.
Right.
What is my need exactly? When I say respect, respect is like a very broad word. Is that I want to be acknowledged, I want to be understood, I want to be, what is it actually? So that idea of emotions as information can, by that we not only we are not suppressing it, but we are not even pandering to it. We are actually following where they can lead us. And then within that, we discussed a lot about this, that but the next point was about humility, honesty, and integrity. So you said that humility is a very high virtue. We can start with honesty, and that means that if somebody has disrespected me and I feel hurt by that, so humility doesn't mean that I try to just simply efface myself out of existence and think that I don't matter at all. After all, it is I who am going to use, I am who am meant to serve Krishna. So like if somebody is stepping on my foot, then I can't just wish that away. So there is outer work and inner work. Inner work, I say, if I feel hurt, if somebody's insulted me, I understand that I'm different from my false ego, and I situate myself as separate from the false ego. So then that particular insult will not hurt that much. At the same time, there's outer work also required. It's not that in the name of inner work we just take abuse by others. Rather, we also deal with it externally. So both are required, inner and outer work.
Yes, very good.
And then within that, so it begins with honesty. And honesty also is sometimes difficult. So we could say humility is at a high pedestal, honesty is a little lower, and what is much more accessible for us is integrity. Integrity means if I make some commitments, do I keep them? Whether commitments to others and could be to myself. And when I don't keep them, then again, rather than beating myself up, I evaluate. Maybe it is because I've taken too many things, or because I'm not equipped to do these things. So we start with integrity, then gradually we can move toward honesty. And so you said integrity is measurable, honesty is observable, and then humility will be something which will come by Krishna's grace. We could say it is receivable or something like that. We could rhyme it.
It's receivable. I like that. That. That's really cool.
Yeah, and then we talked about, can we get into, say, obsession about self-care? You said obsession about everything is possible. It could be. So rather than putting self-care into an entirely different category and being paranoid about it, we see self-care like everything else. I can get obsessed about eating delicious prasad. I can get obsessed about how people are treating me. I can get obsessed about, even you said there can be like prestigious obsessions. I can get obsessed over austerity, and that will give me prestige. So obsession is possible anywhere. So we are cautious about it. And I think we concluded talking about how your book is going to come soon, and you also have this course where devotees can connect with you. So are there any things you would like to add as a concluding message?
How did you remember all that? That's pretty cool.
Somebody, thank you.
So it is wonderful. Thank you for your time. I think your lively, cheerful spirit it brings this whole podcast to life.
Well, I don't know. It's really fun to talk about these things because they're really relevant, and we really are alive and real, and we really want to experience that, and so these things can help us to go to those places. But it's funny because every time I talk, I say something new and I give new examples. And now I think maybe I should add that to my book.
Yeah, I think every book is like an evolving process. Yeah, I read one book on writing, and it says that even the award-winning books are simply the last drafts of manuscripts that were dragged by the publishers from the authors.
Yeah. I gotta stop somewhere. I'm getting to that stopping point. Enough is enough. But thank you so much for your time and your excitement about this topic. And if there's anything I can do to serve you, please let me know. Thank you so much.
We will be honored to have you again in future sometime, and we can go deeper into some of the subjects we have discussed.
Okay, it's fun. And then if you can send me the link to the recording, that would be good. I could maybe put it on my website, huh?
Yes, definitely. As soon as it is done.
After you put it out, yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much for your
Thank you
association.
so much. Hare
And
Krishna,
thank you, Gaur
Manju
Kumar.
Prabhu.
Thank you, Shukwa Mataji, very much for sharing your wisdom so generously. And so it's just, you use the word fun. It was like very serious stuff we discussed, but the way you discussed it was very light, very lightheartedly and cheerfully. I think that's also an art, because otherwise it can become very, very disconcerting. It's
Yeah, well, you alerted me when I started to become a little disconcerting there. When I started to become a little heavy, you alerted me right there. You said, wait a minute, let's get a little heavy. So you helped me to lighten up.
And I'd like to thank Gaur Kumar Prabhu also for sparing his time and being with us today.
Yeah.
And you added a lot of, I think you added a lot of good questions, as well as you provided us your associations. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank
Hare
you so
Krishna.
much. I look forward to meeting again.